Good morning. I want to welcome you to the first of two Karnopp Petersen Business 2020 Executive Breakfasts scheduled for 2012. We had one last year, and this is the follow-up to the series that we started in 2011. My name is Tom Sagan. I'm a partner in the Business and Estate Planning Department of Karnopp Petersen. Before we start the program, though, I would like to acknowledge and extend a special thanks to our sponsors and some of the individuals who made this particular 2020 possible. First, really a special thanks to the members of the Higher Education Steering Committee who donated their time and resources to make this program possible. Those individuals include Dr. Becky Johnson, Vice President of Oregon State University Cascades, Dr. Jim Middleton, the President of Central Oregon Community College, Roger Lee, the Executive Director of EDCO, Rod Ray, the CEO of Ben Research, Aaron McDonald, one of my partners at Karnopp Petersen, and Josh Newton, one of my other partners at Karnopp Petersen, who is going to be the moderator for you today. I also want to thank our sponsors who, without their involvement, this would be a very difficult program to put on. Our title series sponsors include Oregon Business Magazine, Ben Broadband, Zolo Media. Our platinum sponsors include Oregon State University Cascades, Cascade Business News, KQAK 105.7 and News Radio Central Oregon 1340 KBNW, and our gold sponsors, Central Oregon Community College, EDCO, Bank of the Cascades, Action Printing and Typesetting, they were our printing sponsor, Southwick Specialty Advertising, our accommodation sponsor, the Oxford Hotel, News Talk 1110 KBND, and Cascade Catering, who you can thank for the breakfast that we had today. This program is being filmed today, which is somewhat unique for this type of event. And Karnopp Petersen is partnering with Talk of the Town, who many of you know, is going to put on a special episode which will include this 2020 presentation as the first in a two-part series on the subject of higher education in Central Oregon. Those episodes are going to start airing on Thursday, May 24th at 6 o'clock p.m. and then again at 11 o'clock p.m. on Ben Broadband, KOTV, Channels 11 and the HD counterpart 611. And it will also be available on KOTV on demand. For those of you who don't know about this Business 2020 series, it is Central Oregon's premier executive seminar series, which is designed with the help of state and local and national experts to examine critical business issues with a regional focus, with the goal of hopefully elevating the local dialogue to challenge and inspire leading Central Oregon businesses, civic organizations, and governmental entities to address the very difficult issues that we face in this community, like higher education. Karnopp Petersen's been a vital part of Central Oregon for more than 75 years, and we believe that this venue offers a unique opportunity to foster the development and the growth of Central Oregon businesses. The 2020 series is scheduled to occur twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. This obviously is our spring event. The fall event will discuss communication infrastructure and how that can support business growth. So on behalf of Karnopp Petersen and our Business 2020 sponsors, we want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules today to be part of this series. And I'd like to introduce the moderator for today's program, one of my partners, Josh Newton, who was on the steering committee and helped put this program together. Josh is a graduate of Oregon State, where he got his undergraduate degree, and his law degree from Willamette University, and is a partner in our litigation department. So would you please welcome Josh Newton.
Thank you, Tom. I echo many of Tom's remarks and thank the community for turning out for our second event today. Before introducing Dr. Vickers, a couple of key questions, maybe broad thematic questions that the steering committee asked itself in putting together this event is, where are we today with respect to higher education in Central Oregon? That's one of the guiding principles that we've endeavored to answer over the last several months in putting this event together. And this really crystallized in our final meeting yesterday. One of the questions we want to talk about today is what's different now, if anything, about higher education in Central Oregon than it's been in the past? What opportunities lie before us? Where is higher education in our region headed? What is being done to get there? And how can the business community and the people in this audience help? With that, I want to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Lee Vickers. Dr. Vickers is an entrepreneur in higher education. He served as a college and university president at 3 regional institutions for higher education. He has extensive experience and success in expanding higher education's role in regional economic development. His most recent post, he served as president at Dickinson State University in North Dakota. Before that, he was president of both Francis Marion University in South Carolina and Lewis and Clark State College in Idaho. He's also served 3 terms on the Western Interstate Commission of Higher Education. For those that know, it's WICHE. He also currently serves on the board of directors for RUPRI, which is a Center for Rural Entrepreneurship. He's widely recognized for his efforts in linking higher education with community and regional development, including specifically economic development. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Vickers up to deliver his remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. It's my great pleasure to be here. My family has spent their summer vacations in Sun River the last 10 years or so I've had a chance to be in and out of your community. So when I was contacted to talk about this series, I was very intrigued and very pleased to have a chance to be a small part of what you have going on here. Let me thank Karnopp Petersen for sponsoring this event. I think it's critical for communities across the country to have a chance to have this kind of dialogue, and so I commend them for their efforts in that regard. I'd also like to thank Susan Bell and Angie Goodstein for all of their support. Over the past several weeks, I spent considerable time talking to leaders in your community about education, business, the social and cultural climate in Bend and the surrounding area. These brief conversations gave me a snapshot, and I want to underline snapshot, of what is happening in this region, but I am not well enough informed to make specific recommendations regarding your future. I know that Bend is a very desirable place to live and to work, and that you have many initiatives underway to grow your economy and enhance your quality of place. And in my view, you are extremely well positioned to move forward in creating an achievable vision for the future. I hope that the information I will share this morning, based on my experiences, will provide insights into what is possible if everyone works together, and I hope to spark your creative thinking in regard to what you might be able to do here in Bend and in this region. I look forward to our dialogue later with our outstanding panel. This morning I'll talk briefly about the transformation of higher education and the forces that are driving that change, primarily globalization and technology. Next, I'll discuss two case studies, one dealing with the North Dakota University system, as reported at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago meeting in March of 2007, and a second case study of Dickinson State University, which was published by the Northwest Area Foundation in 2006. I'll also make some very brief comments about Arizona State University in Phoenix, where I reside at this point in time. And then I'll wrap up with some examples of some of the outcomes that developed and try to draw out some of the lessons learned, lessons that you may be able to utilize here in your venture to develop your quality of place. And then finally, I will make some observations about Bend and Central Oregon as I see it from the outside looking in. That globalization and technology have transformed higher education is unmistakable. Globalization in higher education is not merely the movement of students and faculty around the world's colleges and universities, but the massive expansion of U.S. colleges and university satellite campuses across the world, the innovations with online courses and degrees, the expansion of for-profit institutions, the drive to attain national and international rankings, and the worldwide pursuit to build so-called world-class universities, and last but not least, the intense competition for the best and the brightest students. These sweeping global changes have created a new kind of free trade, the free trade of minds, as dubbed by the author of The Great Brain Race. Higher education has been thrust to the forefront. The road to economic success, whether in Singapore, China, Europe, or Bend, Oregon, is through our colleges and universities. Add to globalization the pace of technological advances in the movement and transfer of information and the high-tech world of business and industry in a global economy, and it becomes apparent that the old model of higher education is outmoded and a new one is emerging that is more responsive to social and economic needs of society, one that is innovative and entrepreneurial. While the new model in higher education has been slowly emerging, the economic recession has created a sense of urgency, both within and outside the academy. This is readily apparent when the president calls for America to have the highest proportion of college graduates in the world by 2020, and states like Oregon race to set goals to increase the number of baccalaureate and associate degree graduates. Moreover, lawmakers are impatient, if not insistent, that their colleges and universities step up to the challenge, not only by addressing the educational demands of the 21st century, but by becoming more cost-effective, more engaged in the community, more innovative, more entrepreneurial, in short, addressing the new economic and social paradigm to become drivers of the economy. I subscribe to Richard Florida's description of our current economic and social condition in his book, The Great Reset. He argues that we are not only in an economic recession, we're in the midst of a major cultural and economic reset, that we are in the throes of a sea change. How can colleges and universities prepare students to thrive and prosper in this new world and to become engaged citizens? How do colleges and universities create a new model to drive economic growth and become laboratories for solving some of the world's most challenging social problems? And how do they accomplish all of that while grappling with the changing profile of today's students, when, according to Complete College America, a nonprofit think tank, 75% of today's students juggle a combination of family, work, and school while taking classes, and only 25% of today's college students go to school full-time and live on campus. How does this new model for higher education look in practice? My experience as a university president spans 3 decades at 3 institutions in 3 distinctly different regions of the country. I have chosen to discuss North Dakota case studies because they are the most timely. In all cases, however, I would say that the infusion of an entrepreneurial spirit on the campuses enabled the level of community engagement that became the hallmark in the communities in which these universities were located. Although North Dakota is enjoying a period of remarkable prosperity because of the energy boom now, in 1998, the state of North Dakota was struggling economically, and the state was suffering from outmigration. The higher education system was not considered a player in the state's economic future. And at the same time, lawmakers were being pressured to increase higher education funding. In simple terms, what the legislature said to us was, if you want more money, you have to grow the pie. If you make the economy better, we'll give you a larger share of that. But if you don't do that, we will not give you increased funding. In an effort to chart a more reasonable approach to funding and accountability, the legislature established the North Dakota Higher Education Roundtable. This group, comprised of university presidents and business and legislative leaders, was charged with determining how higher education could be redirected to drive economic revitalization and what funding mechanism would be employed to support this new model. The North Dakota Higher Education Roundtable Plan was based on 5 tenets. And obviously it's relatively complex. I'm going to oversimplify it this morning, but I think that you'll get the message just from the name of those tenets. The first one, and the highest priority, was economic development. The second, academic excellence, to be world-class institutions. The third, flexible, responsive system. The charge was to make sure that any citizen in the state of North Dakota had access to higher education within 50 miles of his or her home. It doesn't mean that they had a university within 50 miles, an actual building university, but they had access to higher education. Fourth, funding and rewards. We had a system put in place where each institution had 10 peers from across the country, which forced us, each individual institution, to look out across the country and see what other institutions were doing. And last but not least, sustain the vision. One of the challenges of a bold vision is to sustain it after you initiate or start the process. The presidents of all of the 11 colleges and universities were charged with developing an annual plan based on the roundtable tenets approved by the system chancellor and the State Board of Higher Education. An annual report was presented by each president demonstrating progress on achieving their goals. President's salary increases were based upon performance, and institutional funding was also tied to performance. The outcomes of the roundtable plan, as reported in the case study, were significant. System-wide enrollments increased. Research and grants and contracts increased dramatically. The Red River Research Corridor, involving NDSU and UND and institutions in Minnesota, was developed. Funding for capital projects and buildings rose substantially with both private and public support. New curricula and programs were added to meet emerging workforce needs, and more collaboration and cooperation among the institutions was obvious. In addition to the outcomes listed above, the economic impact of the institutions on the state's economy increased substantially. As illustrated here, the direct economic impact of the university system grew from $534 million to $980 million in 10 years. The total impact in multiple effects throughout the communities grew from $1.6 billion to $2.98 billion. Now, I should point out that the state board and the legislature didn't trust the institutions to develop their own plan to determine economic impact. So they hired outside economists to develop a plan that everyone had to follow so that we're all talking about the same aspects. Now, my guess is you're thinking, well, that's fine, but how does that apply to us? Hang with me, I'll get to more details later. But the bottom line is that this plan was hailed as being very successful across the country by various groups, by legislative bodies and higher education organizations. And the bottom line is, if you develop a plan where everyone understands the expectations, good things can happen. The North Dakota Roundtable Plan gave college and universities a sense of urgency to be entrepreneurial and to focus on excellence. And we were also directed to demonstrate how we could be competitive nationally and internationally. Prior to that, North Dakota, as a culture, all states have cultures. You understand the Oregon culture, I understand the North Dakota culture better than Oregon. In North Dakota, people tend to look inward and backward. They don't tend to look forward. And I won't get into why that's the case, but that is the case. This plan caused all the universities and the people within the universities to look outward. Now, one of the concerns was that the legislature said, okay, you guys wanted this. I'm sorry that they're all guys. You guys wanted this. Now, you're in charge of the economy. If it works, you get the credit. If you don't increase the economy, you also get the credit for not increasing the economy. And I can point out to you that some of my colleagues were very concerned about having that kind of responsibility placed on their shoulders. However, it was a great experiment, and it was very successful. Now let's transition to the case study related to Dickinson State University, one of the 11 institutions within the North Dakota system. Keep in mind that North Dakota has a population of roughly 650,000 people, and they have 11 institutions of higher education. You might wonder, why in the world would you do that? The people care about education. And they've actually had a vote, do you want to close some of the institutions? They said, no, we're going to keep all of them open. I'll spend more time on this case study because it illustrates the possibilities for engagement that are within reach when higher education and business and community leaders commit to collaboration and an entrepreneurial approach. DSU stepped up its commitment to be nimble and responsive to the needs of the community and the region, to provide greater access, to place more focus on global awareness and diversity. And at the same time, we redoubled our focus on quality and accountability. In looking outward, the opportunities to create quality of place and drive economic growth were abundant. There were all kinds of opportunities. With this as a backdrop, Dickinson State University was approached by then U.S. Senator Byron Dorgan of North Dakota to organize and convene 2 national symposiums on the major issue facing the state of North Dakota at the turn of the century, outmigration. With funding from Congress, DSU collaborated with Iowa State University, the University of Montana, and Colorado State University to organize and host the Great Plains Population Symposiums, to study and recommend strategies to reverse the declining economy in the Great Plains. One of the key findings of the research that followed on these symposiums was that rural communities with an engaged college or university were much more likely to prosper than those without a higher education institution. The findings also emphasized the need for universities to support entrepreneurship and foster quality of place. The idea was, if you want your community to be entrepreneurial, if you want to support the entrepreneurs in your community, then you should demonstrate that as an institution. And that's not necessarily common across the country within higher education. The Center for Rural Entrepreneurship coordinated much of the research and became a great partner as the university moved forward. In response to the North Dakota Roundtable, and in light of the research findings coming out of the Population Symposium, we launched several major initiatives on campus. I'd like to talk about 4 of these today, each of which illustrates a particular point regarding the new model for higher education. I'll also discuss partnerships and collaboration beyond the campus, which illustrate the new entrepreneurial model in practice. The concept of an entrepreneurship center evolved directly out of the research from the Population Symposiums. We began to lay the groundwork for a center with curriculum changes, an eScholars program with the University of Portland, and an annual entrepreneurship conference. When the North Dakota governor launched a plan to establish centers of excellence on university campuses to recognize and fund exemplary initiatives that focused on business and higher education, we were ready. Subsequently, the university received a Center of Excellence in Entrepreneurship designation. The $1.15 million award enabled the university to assist manufacturing firms in the region in the areas of workforce and leadership development and the infusion of technology in a decentralized manufacturing model. Kildare Mountain Manufacturing, an aerospace firm, was our initial project. Their major contractor, Boeing, offered them unlimited work if they could expand their operation to other sites in the region. Now, people have a hard time accepting that, but I was in the room when they did that. They said, we'll give you all the work you can handle if you can develop more sites and find more workers. With our assistance, they added a new facility and created over 124 full-time jobs and a number of part-time jobs in the first year. Another opportunity surfaced in 2005 when DSU was awarded a planning grant from the Bush Foundation. The proposal was funded in 2006, providing $500,000 to work with 7 rural communities in southwest North Dakota to develop strategies to boost their economies and develop their quality of place. This is what higher education driving economic development looks like in practice. The Entrepreneurship Center ultimately became the Strom Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation in 2007, when DSU alumni Jerry and Rosie Strom gave us $1 million for the restoration of a building that was ideally suited in the center of the community. Staff were added and center activities were centralized in a new building. Now, I won't take the time to discuss all of the activities in the center, but the list that you have here gives you some idea of what kind of services we provided. If you have questions later on, I'll be happy to answer those. The second campus initiative addressed the need to prepare students for the flat world of the 21st century, globalization. Given North Dakota's geographic isolation, it was clear we needed to infuse the campus environment with an awareness of the massive changes that were taking place globally. Our Global Awareness Initiative was geared to prepare students to compete successfully in a multicultural society and in a global economy. We needed to make diversity a priority in recruitment and retention of students and faculty. The outcomes we were seeking were both practical and idealistic. We wanted our graduates to be prepared for a workplace quite unlike the homogeneous communities in which many of them grew up. And we wanted them to be world citizens, aware and acceptable of other cultures. Because of the Global Awareness Initiative, DSU was one of 10 colleges and universities nationwide selected to participate in the Global Access Project sponsored by the American Association of State Colleges and Universities and the U.S. Department of State. We had 309, in 2008, we had 390 international students from 30 different countries, and on average, we had 4 scholars visiting the campus every semester, 4 different scholars. And the campus, when I arrived, if you talk to the students about going abroad to study for a summer or for a semester or for a year, just kind of rolled their eyes and said, we don't want to go way out there. After this initiative was put in place, we had students going to China, to Russia, to England, to Ukraine. It changed the whole mindset of the student body. The third initiative illustrates how a regional university can help bring focus to the region's unique assets by exploiting those assets, leveraging economic and cultural development. Dickinson State University is located about 30 miles from the North Dakota Badlands and the Theodore Roosevelt National Park in Medora, North Dakota. It's a very unique and beautiful landscape and very historically rich. Yet the university had only minor connections to the national park and to the Theodore Roosevelt Medora Foundation, which controlled much of the tourism activities and the economy in Medora. One particular event provided an opportunity for the university to bring that focus to Southwest North Dakota. In 2001, C-SPAN announced it would be filming a segment on Roosevelt as a writer for the American Writers Series on site at the Theodore Roosevelt Park. With an invitation from the park superintendent, we formed a working group to collaborate on the event. This group recognized the opportunity to market the area and to rally the region to think more entrepreneurially about the culture and the economic assets in our midst. DSU took the lead in organizing what became the first annual TR Symposium. A collaboration that started with one event became the Roosevelt Initiative on campus and ultimately the Theodore Roosevelt Center on the campus of Dickinson State University. One of the most notable achievements of this initiative is the Theodore Roosevelt Digital Library on the campus. Working in collaboration with the Library of Congress, Harvard, and the National Park Service, DSU is creating a digital presidential library housing all of Roosevelt's papers. This innovative and entrepreneurial project is drawing attention from scholars and institutions across the country. And TR's connection to North Dakota and the Badlands and ranching have become a point of greater interest for people across the country and for international visitors as well. The fourth and final initiative that I'll talk about illustrates how a regional university must respond to the educational needs of individuals in the community and the region by providing access. Like many higher education institutions, DSU had become insular in its approach to developing education. To bring staff and priority status to providing access, we established a division of extended programs. This new division collaborated with and coordinated degree programs on the two community college campuses in Bismarck and in Williston, coordinated all online courses and degrees, provided support on campus for innovative instructional development, coordinated major seminars and conferences, and worked with the public schools and coordinated dual credit. This unit also coordinated the university's efforts to identify and deliver higher education to the 3 affiliated tribes of North Dakota. So this division became the hub for educational outreach activities in the community and in the region. I indicated earlier that I would mention briefly some of the partnerships and collaborations beyond the campus that might be of interest to you. We were engaged with many sectors of the community in Dickinson and Southwest North Dakota and on many levels, but today I'll highlight just a few major capital projects that came to fruition because education, business, government, community, and regional organizations collaborated and cooperated. The backbone for this collaborative environment was the Manufacturers Roundtable. In North Dakota, they like round tables. They don't like square tables. They like round tables. And so you note there are a lot of round tables. It was composed of a very entrepreneurial group of business people who valued cooperation over competition when they formed the roundtable. It soon became a venue for bringing in leaders from other community organizations. And over time, the Manufacturers Roundtable became a leadership roundtable. When the need to have a community recreation center resurfaced after several failed attempts over a couple of decades, the Manufacturers Roundtable Group came up with a strategy that proved successful. With creative funding and collaborative use agreements, a $13.5 million West River Recreation Complex was built on the edge of the DSU campus. This 93,000 square foot facility is recognized as one of the best recreation facilities of its kind in a 4-state region. The university played a pivotal role in making this project a reality. And I can tell you that when we have visitors to campus, whether they're students or parents, one of the first things we show them is this recreation center, because it really does impress them from the standpoint of what we have or had in that community. The Ben C. Frank Human Performance Center was established with a gift from an alumnus. Frappier Acceleration Sports Training of Fargo and Agaton Fitness of Sweden became our partners in research and development of innovation in exercise equipment. They chose us because we were willing to work with them to use our students to experiment on their equipment. This project is an example of higher education becoming a pivotal partner with business, research, and development. It also shows that in many cases the consequences or the outcome in some of these projects is not what you expect. Our men's track team won the national championship. This is NAIA, not NCAA. Won the national championship 3 years in a row. Now, when you think of track and a national level student athletes, you don't think of North Dakota. When you mention North Dakota, you don't think of a small university having 2 or 3 athletes who ended up in the World Games and 2 or 3 ended up in the Olympics. But that's what happened. And it happened because of this partnership, because our student athletes and our students had access to some of the finest equipment in the world. The Badlands Activity Center was another project which evolved out of multiple needs and a collaboration. DSU needed a new football and track facility. The local and regional high schools used the university facilities, but were considering moving playoff games because of the condition of the facilities. Moreover, a long-term effort for a convention center in the city had failed. We convened leaders from the city, county, high schools, businesses, friends, and alumni to discuss a new approach to meeting all these needs. The result was a $16 million facility financed by the city, county, school districts, business donors, and university foundation. I don't know if you can tell from the picture or not, but one of the challenges in North Dakota in football and athletics are really a big deal there. It gets colder than hell toward the end of the year. So in this facility, we have 14 skyboxes for the manufacturers who had enough money that they wanted a skybox. We had 1 complete floor for those people who wanted to watch the games indoors. We had 3 locker rooms, 1 for each of the 2 local high schools, so they thought it was theirs, plus the universities. And we had 1 very large space, larger than anyone else in that community had, for large conventions. And we had great cooperation from all of the hotels because they saw this as being a plus. So it's a great example of what you can do if you work together. The University Foundation assets grew significantly over the decade, from $3 million in 1999 to $16 million in 2009. And it became strong. As it became stronger, it was able to assist in a number of key projects. Hawks Point was one of those projects. It's a retirement center for alumni and friends, modeled after similar projects at larger campuses, for example, the University of Washington. It had 88 units and 10 individual houses, if you will, cottages. Hawks Point was conceived as a way of meeting an expressed need in the region for a retirement center that offered educational and other amenities for active adults and to attract alumni and friends to return to North Dakota. In partnership with the foundation and a newly formed LLC, we built this complex on campus for approximately $10 million. I called last week, it's now valued at over $20 million. In summary, the entrepreneurial environment we set out to establish on the DSU campus in 1999 resulted in significant advances for the university. One of the central goals of the administration was to reach out to provide more access to higher education. Through our collaboration with the community colleges, the 3 affiliated tribes, the rural communities involved in the Bush Grant, the region's public schools, we impacted lives and we improved communities. New curriculum and programs were added to meet the emerging workforce needs, and the enrollment grew. We infused the campus with a global perspective through our Global Awareness Initiative, resulting in a number of international students as well as faculty and cultural exchanges with, as I said, Russia, China, Ukraine, and England. One direct economic impact of this effort was a substantial increase in international trade from businesses in Southwest North Dakota. Community engagement was the key to advancing the initiatives I discussed earlier, as well as the capital projects I described. With a focus on innovative projects and collaboration, the university enjoyed considerable success in securing both grants and private funding to assist in the implementation of many of our initiatives. The university's economic impact increased substantially, and as you can see here, the direct impact increased from 14.9 million to 37.5 million, and the overall impact, total impact, increased from 43.6 million in 1999 to 109.6 million in 2009. Now, to help you understand how you get some of these numbers, the direct impact is the amount of money that the university spends directly into the community. And then the larger impact looks at the multiplying factor that you used, and again, this was based on the board's formula. Although each locality and region of the country is unique, the precepts for creating a dynamic environment where higher education is tied to economic development and a center for cultural and social engagement can easily be adapted to the regions being served. My experience has been in small regional colleges and universities, and I've always contended that small allows you to be nimble. That may be true, but it's also true that what matters most is leadership. I'm now living in one of the largest metropolitan areas in the country, Phoenix, Arizona, and in a city that boasts and hosts the largest public university in the nation. I have observed with admiration the manner in which ASU President Michael Crow manages to move a large and often unwieldy urban university in an innovative and entrepreneurial model. Newsweek in August 2008 said ASU's new American university model is one of the most radical redesigns in higher learning. ASU is literally involved in hundreds of collaborations with business, government, and nonprofit entities to grow the economy and make Phoenix one of the most progressive cities in the country. ASU worked with the city of Phoenix to revitalize downtown, establishing a downtown campus with the Cronkite School of Journalism and the School of Nursing as anchor programs. ASU joined forces with the preservation community and saved historic and mid-century buildings, turning them into downtown residence halls for the students who were taking classes downtown. They then worked with the city to get mass transit from downtown to the main campus in Tempe. ASU is a prime example of the new American university on a larger scale. Let's turn now to the lessons learned in all these endeavors. The lessons learned in the population symposiums, the North Dakota case studies, and ASU, and my experiences at other institutions where I served as president are consistent. Number one, it is critically important in this knowledge-based, high-tech global society of the 21st century that higher education provide leadership within the communities and region it served. They must be fully engaged with the community and the region. Number two, communities and organizations need to seek entrepreneurial leadership. The same skills that make business entrepreneurs successful are needed for those who are engaged in higher education and community development initiatives. Number three, the importance of cultivating and engaging leaders from all segments of the community and region is critical to building a broad base of public and private support for entrepreneurial development and for capital projects. Collaboration and cooperation are the pillars for building a dynamic entrepreneurial environment. 4, the economic future of a community or region is directly tied to its quality of place. And last but not least, a shared vision with a sense of urgency ensures action will be taken and goals will be accomplished. A stakeholders group like the Dickinson Manufacturers Roundtable provides a framework for sharing ideas, information and resources, developing a vision for the future of the community, and articulating and reinforcing that vision to the community at large. This approach eliminates duplication of effort and wasted resources. By joining forces, supporting bold leadership, embracing change, and creating a sense of urgency and investing in the future, the opportunities are unlimited, regardless of where you are. Now some brief comments and observations about your community in light of what I have shared and what I have learned about your community. From my point of view, Bend and Central Oregon have a unique opportunity. You have many extraordinary attributes: a location with enviable natural resources, weather, recreation, a developing high-tech sector, quality health care, a noteworthy business climate, and expanding higher education presence. Higher education will become even more important in the next decade. I want to repeat that. Higher education will become even more important in the next decade. The Georgetown Center for Education and Work predicts that by 2018, 64% of the jobs in Oregon will require some post-secondary education. Complete College America predicts it will be 87% by 2020. Moreover, Oregon, like many other states, has enacted legislation, year 40-40-20, to significantly increase the number of baccalaureate and associate degree holders. Therefore, Bend, like other communities, its size, location, and with similar demographics, is best served by having a 4-year degree-granting university and a vibrant community college. Communities that have a high-quality, well-coordinated, seamless education system, P16, are best equipped to meet the needs of a global-based society, as well as to add significantly to the community and the region's quality of place. The positive relationship that exists between COCC and OSU Cascades is an asset for the community, the region, and the state. Assuming that the expansion of the OSU Cascades campus goes forward, it will put Bend and the surrounding region in a very enviable position. COCC and OSU will be in a position to develop a model higher education partnership that demonstrates a commitment to innovation, entrepreneurial thinking, excellence, access, and community engagement. Very few places in the country have the opportunity that you're facing right now. Higher education is a magnet for talent and therefore a key element in the quality of place equation. With higher education as a major economic driver for your community and the region, you'll have the opportunity to develop and implement an aggressive marketing strategy with higher education highlighted as a key element in your quality of place. There will never be enough resources from state appropriations and federal grants and contracts to support the growing needs of higher education in this era of globalization, high tech, and intense competition. As I highlighted from the North Dakota case studies, higher education, cities, counties, business and corporations, civic organizations, private donors, and foundations must collaborate to ensure that education resources are available in their communities to educate the workforce needed to be competitive in the 21st century. Utilizing innovative approaches and collaborative capital funding, regional universities can provide multi-use and shared facilities such as recreation centers, housing, healthcare, and athletic facilities. When higher education and civic leaders recognize the importance of an entrepreneurial environment and invest in creating one, a powerful partnership emerges that can change a region. Remember, the road to economic success runs through college campuses. This is a good place to stop and let our panel give you their thoughts on this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Vickers. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that we have Susan to my right and Marquet to my left. So if you have questions, even now, go ahead and hand them to Susan and Marquet, and we'll get them up front. We've elected to have each of the panelists actually provide a short introduction for themselves, but I will at least identify who they are. Starting to my most immediate right, we have Roger Lee, the Executive Director of EDCO. To his right, we have Kirk Schueler, who is the Chief Administrative Officer of St. Charles and a member of the State Board of Higher Education. We've got Dr. Vickers, whom you've all met and listened to. We have Dr. Becky Johnson, the Vice President of OSU Cascades. And we have Dr. Jim Middleton, the President of COCC, and Keith Shipman, the President and CEO of Horizon Broadcasting and the co-chair of the Deschutes Economic Alliance's University Committee. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Roger to introduce himself.
Economic Development for Central Oregon is a tri-county organization, and so we have 4 offices in the region, including one here in Bend, and I get the pleasure of serving a 36-member board, so we have lots of decision makers, including some at the table here, and it's been my pleasure to serve in that position for the last 13 years, so I'm going to pass it to Kirk.
Thank you, Roger. Kirk Schueler. I am Chief Administrative Officer at St. Charles Health System. I've been in Bend for 19 years, almost 19 years. Previous to St. Charles, I worked for Brooks Resources Corporation here in town, and I am here today, obviously, as a member of the State Board of Higher Education. I'm also chair of the Finance and Administration Committee for the State Board, and also chaired the HEAT Committee, which was 2 years ago a group of local constituents that got together and produced a vision for higher education in Central Oregon. It was then reported to the State Board, and that vision was adopted. So that's my role.
I'm Vice President, Oregon State University Vice President in charge of the Cascades campus, and I was in Corvallis for 25 years, starting as a professor in the College of Forestry. I'm an economist by training, quite familiar with the economic impact analysis that Dr. Vickers was talking about. Came here in 2009, temporarily, I thought, to lead the OSU Cascades campus through a transition to find a new leader, and end up being that leader, and been very happy to be here. Thank you.
Jim Middleton, Central Oregon Community College President, and really feel blessed to be with this institution and in this community at a time of real potential pivot for us. I think what we all share is this time for what we do in the near range has the potential for decades-long impact, and that's an exciting time to share with you.
Keith Shipman, President and CEO of Horizon Broadcasting Group, and I've been here 12 years now and have the chance each day to visit with business owners who are candidly struggling to understand what our future economy is going to look like, and I think most businesses are excited that we have a tremendous opportunity to strengthen our future with higher education.
Well, thank you, panel. To get us started, I asked a question actually in my introductory remarks, is where are we today with respect to higher education in Central Oregon? Perhaps because Becky's institution has received the most press recently, and I suspect that people in the audience would like to hear from her, I'm going to ask that she take that question first, and then I know that people would like to hear from Jim as well as the rest of the panel.
Great. Thanks, Josh. As President Middleton said, it really is an exciting time for higher education in Central Oregon. I sense this momentum in our community. I feel like people are all on the same page. They can see the future. It was really inspiring to listen to some of the things that Dr. Vickers talked about and what can happen here in Central Oregon. It's clear that COCC laid the foundation for higher education in Central Oregon, and that was a result of community support. And it just shows when a community comes together, what they can do to make things happen. And as we moved through higher education, OSU Cascades, other institutions came in here to provide capstone bachelor's degrees and graduate programs. And when the economy was booming from real estate, that was maybe good enough for our economy. But I think we're in a different place now. We have the recession. People went back to school, which has really strained our capacity, both at COCC and at OSU Cascades. And Central Oregon has realized that for economic development, we need a more diverse economy. So I think we're ready now to expand into a 4-year comprehensive university, which will help on a number of fronts, including business recruitment, workforce development, research partnerships and spin-offs, and then a stable employment base that's provided by the university itself. So I feel like we're in this window of opportunity where COCC is thriving in its mission. We're growing by double digits in enrollment at Oregon State Cascades. COCC has a need for our facility that we currently use on their campus, so it's an opportune time to transition to a different location for us. The community seems to be supportive like they never have been before of higher education and a 4-year campus. And I feel like the state leaders know that now is the time to invest in higher education for economic development. And I think even the Valley recognizes that if we're going to have economic prosperity for everyone, it needs to happen all throughout Oregon, including Central Oregon. So I feel like we need to take advantage of this window of opportunity and really seize it for the future.
Most of you know that COCC was one of the most rapidly growing colleges in the country. There's 2 plaques in my office that list us 2 years in a row among the 50 fastest growing colleges. We doubled enrollment in 4 years. That's easy to point out. We're doubling facilities, but more importantly, I think we've been shifting a focus to programs of distinction, not just more of the same, but larger. Culinary, I think, was one of our first examples of that, of where we set the goal of being a Best in the West program. And we are both in size. We've grown in that program, frankly, from about 20 students a few years ago. We're at about 200 students in that program now, and we'll be attracting students from a much broader area than the local area. With our new facilities in health and science, we believe we'll be supporting more programs of distinction in those areas, and are very proud and excited, and I think it fits with Dr. Vickers' message, looking at our new facility in Redmond, 2 programs of regional and I think potentially national distinction, a new center for entrepreneurial development to support formation of companies and support entrepreneurs in the area, and new program in non-destructive testing and non-destructive inspection, both for manufacturing and other areas that will be one of the very few programs in a community college in the country of that type. And I think we have to keep looking for those programs that are not just what everyone else has every place else, but also looking at what we can have here that either in content or in quality really stands out on a national basis. Even though we are a community college, we can be national in that scope.
Many of you probably read last Friday, the Finance and Administration Committee did recommend a capital budget to the full board. That board will meet on June 1st and consider that capital budget. It also includes an operating budget, which is vitally important also. And in that capital budget was funds, bonding capacity basically for resources for OSU Cascades to expand its campus. And so it's vitally important. It's obviously just a first step also. The good news is that it through the efforts of OSU, they rated it high on their own campus, and so it came through on a system-wide basis, ranked fairly high, which has encouraged all of us and hopefully the community also. The June 1st meeting really will just confirm any budgets, adopt them at the state level, but of course those budgets have another hoop to go through, and that's legislatively and through the governor's office. So it's got a ways to go. We're excited about, I'm excited as a Central Oregonian of where we stand right now. I want to reiterate Becky's point of the sense in the community, both here locally and I think also on the statewide level of, first on the community level, for living here 19 years, I think this is the most excitement I've been around on higher education. There's a lot of momentum, a lot of talk in the community, a lot of press. These are all good things, make everybody aware of what's going on, but almost more importantly, the advantages that Dr. Vickers talked about of higher ed. On a statewide level, you heard about the 40-40-20 goal, and the 40-40-20 goal is driving a lot of discussion and decisions at the state level about how do we achieve that level of education. If you don't know what that is, 40% of, I think it's 25-year-olds and above will have bachelor degrees or higher. 40% will have some sort of post-secondary degree or certificate, and 20% will have a high school education. Well, I think we're at about 27% in the state right now for, and the goal is at 40%. And the general rule here is that for the higher ed system to achieve this, we probably need to build another campus the size of U of O and maybe half again as big as Oregon State, so in Corvallis. So there's a lot of capacity that has to be created. And one of my mantras has been at the state level that Central Oregon really is a great site for that. It's a great place for that investment. And that message has done well. It's not the message. Obviously, the entire state realizes that these investments have to be made to reach that 40-40-20 goal, and we just happen to be in the right place at the right time, I think, now. So,
I am going to exercise a little moderator executive discretion. We have some good questions coming in that I think the panel would enjoy responding to. This is a panel question. And I'm going to ask Keith to respond first, and then anybody else who wants to. The question is, what is the most appropriate/effective role for the city of Bend to play in the effort to create a true four-year university in Bend? In parens, OSU Cascades, close parens, question mark.
So we're going to address the elephant in the room first today. My feeling is that the city of Bend has to invest in higher education in the future, and I'm a big believer in that we need to aim high and miss rather than aim low and hit, or else we're not going to achieve our long-range goals for our region. When I state that I believe the city of Bend must invest in this, I believe that they need to see that higher education is a way for us to develop a sustainable economy for the 21st century. And that said, the way they need to invest from my perspective as a business owner in this community so that we can be sustainable is to fast-track permits, to waive or substantially reduce SDCs, to actually invest in the growth and proliferation of the OSU Cascades campus and Central Oregon Community College's campus, because those two go hand in hand in developing a workforce for our region in the future.
Roger, what would be your response to that question?
Well, I'd say being a regional organization, I think it's responsibility certainly of Bend, but not excluding the other communities in the region as well. I think COCC is led by example in this case, and OSU with them, with open campuses now in Madras and Prineville. So I would look at it as both the responsibility of the city of Bend, but also other communities to support a really regional four-year institution and campus here.
Becky, would you like to answer that question?
I have a little more self-interest than, than the others, but I have met with city leaders and some city councilors, and I found them to be very supportive and responsive. One idea that has been thrown out by John Costa, and I think President Ray talked about it a little bit when he was here as well, is Juniper Ridge originally had 200 acres slated for higher education. And you could think about those 200 acres as a land grant in the old definition of land grant, where the federal government gave land to universities to either build on or to sell to finance a new university in that location. So it's possible that in the future that 200 acres at Juniper Ridge could be used in one way or another to help support the growth of the campus.
Dr. Vickers, here's a question directed to you. What is the role of a private university in this process? Is it a complement to public university? Is it only public that can accomplish this?
In answering that, let me point out that there's definitely a trend across the country for cities, for communities, for regions to try to bring in additional college campuses. As I was telling some of my colleagues here last night, in Phoenix, for example, Mesa, which is a suburb of Phoenix, the mayor put out a memo inviting 1,000 small liberal arts institutions, most of them faith-based, to submit a proposal to move to Mesa, Arizona. Keep in mind that, as I mentioned, that they have ASU, other private institutions, and I don't know, 10 or 15 community colleges. Mesa has 2 empty buildings, city buildings. So they've decided that their best strategy is to try to fill those 2 buildings by bringing in these campuses. And their goal is to actually find 5. They've signed 2. They have a 3rd one that they're finalizing, and they're going to try to find 2 more. So this has been a major discussion over this past last month or so. Let me try to summarize that discussion. It's been pointed out that people should realize that very, very seldom will a private four-year institution really bring you a campus. See, people think, for example, let's take the Mesa example. Benedictine College is one of the ones that's already signed up, and they're located in Illinois. I don't know a lot about them, but I do know that in their case in particular, the campus in Mesa won't resemble at all the campus, their original campus. It will be an office building with a few staff and adjunct faculty who'll do the best they can to start out. And their goal is if they can get 150 students or so, that'll be great. So don't assume that if you have a private institution coming in, don't assume that it's going to look like what it looks like in its home ground. They're doing this for 1 or 2 reasons, according to the research I read. One is either to make money, or 2 is simply to share their particular emphasis if they think that there's a population that will help in that regard. So they're not going to just be coming in to help you as a community. They have their own axe to grind, if you will. One point that was made is that that deals with support from the community. And it seems to me that if you think about this, this is something that any community thinking about a private institution should keep this in mind. Even if the private institution promises, if I'm institution X, I promise that I won't go out and compete with Becky on a day-to-day basis as far as trying to raise money. Even if I keep that promise, if I have 200 students on my campus, they won't keep that promise. They'll be out asking you every day for contributions to support their various projects. So you're going to have students from these 2 campuses and students from those private institutions doing the same thing. If you're willing to live with that, then okay. But keep in mind that you should look very carefully at what that might do to your community. If your community is large enough, diverse enough that you can handle additional institutions, then why not? On the other hand, and again, as I indicated earlier, I don't know as much about this as obviously these people here, but it seems to me that you have an opportunity right now that you simply can't let go. So I would urge you to put your full force behind what you have in front of you, and then if you have additional resources or energy, then look elsewhere.
So here's a question for Jim, Becky, or Roger, or all 3 of you. It's a good question, perhaps the first question of its kind today, but one that certainly the steering committee and the panel and our firm, we wanted to focus on. We have an audience here. We have people who are interested enough in higher education to be here. and we assume that there's people motivated to assist in the higher education effort. So this question is to that end, which is, what can the community do to provide adequate housing stock for a student population? Is the city of Bend preparing for it? And could this be seen as an economic driver, such as it is in Eugene right now? So.
Yeah, right now, COCC has had about a 17-year project, one of our quickest decisions ever made, looking at student housing. And we have preliminary plans looking at housing for about 330 students. We did a housing study by a nationally respected group that indicated that COCC, without any participation from Oregon State Cascades, could support 900 students, demand for 900 beds. We're trying to be conservative looking at that at 330. That is one of those issues where the finance plan for that is challenging for us, and it's one of those areas, as Keith said, that some city help as far as the fees for that and fast tracking some of those elements can literally make the difference whether or not we can build them. We're looking at this point of, if we do that, of putting it right in the center of the campus rather than on the neighborhood perimeter. But it really is a point of bringing other people to the community, but also recognizing, our service district, is huge. We've got 10,000 square miles that we're serving, and we need to house some of the students who are in some of those outlying areas, even though we've opened a Prineville and Madras campus. So we would see that as a stepping stone. Part of that analysis that was done by this professional firm indicated that housing in general in Bend is not student friendly. It doesn't do 9-month leases and a number of other aspects that does not make it really attractive for students, that really does make institution, college-owned housing more appropriate in serving those students. The other aspect of it too is that quality student housing can create a much more effective first-year experience for students and help them move toward their degree rather than just having them scattered all over in individual housing. So we think that that can be important for COCC, and we think in partnership with Oregon State, but is challenging for us to put that whole initiative together.
I would echo Jim's comments about success for students who do live on campus in their first year. The data is pretty clear on that. So I'm a firm believer of having our freshmen live on campus once we have freshman programs. But it's going to be both because, as you know, students don't want to stay on campus much longer than their freshman year. So there's going to be a big market for student housing outside of both of our campuses. But we both will want to be developing very good quality housing on campus with programs that serve students with their needs in their first year. When we go to recruit out of state internationally, which is part of our business model for the future, the first question that parents ask is there housing on campus, because they want their kids to be in a safe environment.
I'd just add, on a statewide level, we've seen 2 of the last 3 large dormitory projects, one at PSU and one at Southern. Both were outside entities that are constructing these under an agreement, usually a land lease sort of agreement from the institution. So that's a trend that's growing in the United States, but here in Oregon, two large projects. And so there's that. Luckily, I guess there's folks out there that'll develop those units, and the institutions aren't having to put that capital out. So.
Here's another question that I do know is on the minds of many in the community, and we've discussed it with the steering committee and with the panel even yesterday, is this is directed to Jim and Becky, but I think anybody could answer. Will there still be collaboration between COCC and OSU Cascades, or will they become competitors as OSU Cascades transitions to offer 4-year degrees? How will this expansion affect current students?
Yeah, we're doing everything we can to stop this expansion. No. No, we've had this discussion among our staff, and I think one of the things I've said from the day I was here is if you look at the great state public universities in this country, there's a vibrant, strong community college in the backyard. You know, we look at Lane Community College, you know, is in Eugene. My own doctorate was done at University of Michigan with Washtenaw Community College, you know, in the backyard. We have complementary missions, we have complementary students. The other element in the mid-range is that even as we look at transition for Oregon State Cascades, they will be bringing students to the area, beginning to offer some freshman, sophomore courses, but frankly, will not in early years be able to offer the full array of courses throughout the entire week, day, evening, weekend that we can provide. So many of the students who will be coming out of the area are students we would not have attracted, and they will not be able to get all of the coursework from the university, particularly in the first 5 to 10 years, and they will be needing to come to us. We also believe it's helpful in our attracting the highest quality faculty as we have collaboration and have opportunity for some of our faculty to teach upper divisional or even graduate courses. That's a unique opportunity that positions us more competitively to bring in the very best faculty. Also, I think there's an advantage for both of us as we look at which things are separate facilities, but what we still do as far as shared facilities. We built from the start, before I even came, a college library that supports university-level research and library resources. That will continue to be the library for both institutions for quite some time, and we I think, look at using taxpayer dollars more efficiently in that direction. I think the challenge and opportunity for us to say is as there may be some slight geographic separation, we have an opportunity to show even greater collaboration of creating a national model of 2-year and 4-year partnership, and that needs to be on our agenda as much as it is building us as 2 independent institutions.
I don't think I have anything to add. I have a great partner in President Middleton, and he covered all the ways that I think we're going to continue to partner on facilities and programs, and it will make both of our institutions stronger.
I'll take a swing at this from the business community. I grew up in Bellingham, Washington, where you had Western Washington University, Whatcom Community College, and Bellingham Technical College, all 3 educating pieces of the workforce that are so important to the businesses there, which rely upon an educated workforce. And that's what we need, we as business people need to support here in Central Oregon from my perspective. We need to make sure that Oregon State Cascades is healthy, that COCC is healthy, both on the junior college track and the trades track, so that we can have all 3 legs on that stool in an educated workforce so that we can compete against the Bellinghams and the Chicos and the Eugenes and the Ellensburgs who are out there gathering manufacturing jobs while we're getting left at the altar because we don't have an educated workforce. This is a tremendous opportunity for us in the business community to support what's going on with Becky and Jim.
The fact of having a 4-year institution here with a greater presence is going to help the community college continue to up its game and be responsive. And I think it's not to be overlooked the fact that you have a system now where in the headlines in the last week or two, a lot about student debt. And you've got a situation with the 2 and 2 that's not going to go away with the creation of the 4 that offers students on that track an opportunity to get education not only quicker, I think with the course offerings they can get through the community college, but also a heck of a lot cheaper than maybe going to a full-blown institution, 4-year institution for those entire 4 years. So it gives students options. And from our perspective in economic development for manufacturing technology companies, they want the options of a community college for ongoing training, maybe not even degree programs, but keeping up skills, taking certain coursework that COCC will continue to deliver, I'm sure.
Roger, could you explain for those in the audience who may be wondering what the 2 and 2 approach is?
Well, the 2 and 2, essentially, freshman and sophomore courses are provided by COCC currently. Junior and senior courses are provided by COCC, or excuse me, by OSU for an OSU degree. So you can go, I don't know what the exact quarter pricing is or annual pricing of that is, but I think it represents for a whole degree about a 20%, 25% discount over going to, let's say, another 4-year institution in Oregon.
We're also having discussions now about new types of degrees that we can open up some opportunities for students to move to a baccalaureate degree from our focused career technical programs at a faster pace than they currently can. Traditionally, the 2+2 has focused more on the more standard liberal arts, general education kind of base, but there's great opportunities for a new kind of degree that we're also working on.
Well, as is often the case with these types of discussions, we are running out of time rapidly. I want to get to really our last question, and this is really for the benefit of the panelists and the audience. Panelists, you get an opportunity here to speak directly to the audience. You are all leading the higher education effort in your own way. We suspect you all need help from volunteers in your own ways. If there are people out there willing to volunteer, maybe more motivated because of today's event, how can they help? And Roger, I'll start with you and we'll just work our way down.
Well, I would just say that I think there's lots of opportunities to get involved. There are a number of different groups meeting on this, I think somewhat independently. I think there's some communication between those. EDCO has a higher education kind of opportunity group that's meeting. I see a few members out in the audience. I see Les out there and John, who heads that up for us. Our focus is certainly on supporting the efforts we've talked about today already. And I think those who have an interest in exploring some of the more innovative delivery systems would encourage you to maybe get in contact with me or any of our staff here. There's Dana Deschutes is also here to investigate what we can do online. I think online will be a continuing growth in this country, not only from a cost perspective, but just a schedule perspective. And that's one of the things we're focused on is could we possibly create an online university right here with incredible web and SEO capabilities with our software industry here to really have a Google for online courses that are delivered across the country, regardless of public or private. This would be the benefit, obviously, of searchers around the country, but to our own students and businesses that say, hey, I didn't know I could take a course from XYZ University right here in an online situation. It doesn't answer the whole question, but it's just a piece of the puzzle. So we'd be happy to get involved with that, and I'll let others speak to how you might get involved with their efforts.
Well, from my perspective, it's a bit political. The community push, if you will, or the community support is a huge thing. Obviously, locally, it's important to let our elected officials know what we want to have happen, what we want them to support in Salem. But the success of these efforts at that level will also need to be supported statewide. And so I guess when I think about this, if a business community here or any resident here, as they talk on a statewide level, whether it's with peers or coworkers, even politically, I suppose, I think it's an important message to keep out there on a statewide level that Central Oregon is ready, it's the right time, everything's kind of lining up just right. But it's a political message that will need the support, and of course we're going back to the idea of how do we fund these things, how does the money come to support both the growth of the campus physically, but also on a statewide level, how do we continue to invest in higher ed? This is a key point. We could spend a couple hours up here talking about the state's reduced investment in higher education. I have a sense that that tide is starting to change. I know the conversation over those issues is more and more across the state, hopefully here too, obviously. So mine is more of a political message of when the opportunity presents itself, let your elected officials know what this is about, what it means to you as a business, and And just as importantly, if you are at a state level with anybody, any of your peers or other elected officials, let them know too, because it really does matter. It's mattered at the state board level. The Deschutes Economic Alliance sent a great letter to our chairman of the board, signed by probably some of you in this room, and those things have an impact. So we can't forget about that those things matter. The community effort matters.
I guess from my perspective, being an outsider, I would say this. If you take a leadership class, and many of you obviously have, one of the things that usually is driven home is that everyone does make a difference. The question is, what kind of difference are you going to make? But you all make a difference. This issue, I would say, is you have an opportunity that very few people in the country have. This is really a special moment and a special place. It's special that the president of Oregon State University is willing to take the risk to say, I'll support this. From a business standpoint, he or they could go to Portland. There are a whole lot more students right now in Portland. Don't take that for granted. The fact that you have these two colleagues here who have answered the question so well and who obviously have thought about this and care about this a great deal, don't take that for granted, because that isn't the typical approach that people often take. Last but not least, you matter a great deal. So if you were here this morning, you heard this, make sure that you're telling other people. If you have questions, make sure that you're asking those questions. Make sure that you are conveying that there is a sense of urgency in this regard, and also take some pride in the fact that you're going to build a special system. There's no reason, for example, that these two colleagues can't also bring in the online aspect. I'm sure that they've thought about that, and I'm sure that they'll do that. So you can design this program that really is special. They're going to need your help. The community needs your help. You can start 5 minutes after you leave here by telling other people all the great things you've heard.
And I'll just reiterate Kirk's emphasis on, if you do know people statewide or in the valley, that's going to be an important part of our capital request. We are asking for $16 million in state bonds. I know our local legislators are supportive of that, but they aren't the ones that will carry the vote in the end, so we will need support. We're also needing to match that capital with some private donations, and right now we're trying to raise $1 million from 40 donors by June 30 as an indication of broad community support that we can bring to the state lawmakers, and would of course be willing to talk to any of you afterward if you're interested in helping in that effort. Do hire our interns and our graduates. We have a lot of great students who can work in your businesses. Try them out as interns and then hire them if they work out for you. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to participate in the planning of the new campus. What degrees and skills are you looking for in your businesses? You know, we're going to be growing quite rapidly. Jim talked about his new tech center in Redmond. There's a lot of opportunities for us to design degrees that meet the workforce needs. We've done that with our energy engineering degree. We're doing that with our computer science degree. We need to look forward 5-10 years and say, what are the next degrees that we need? Help us solve our traffic, parking, infrastructure issues. Help provide the services that faculty and students are going to need as we grow in Bend and Central Oregon. And finally, send your kids and grandkids, nieces and nephews to both COCC and OSU Cascades, even if you're a duck.
Two things that I'd like to focus on, and one is sort of what's the mindset that we adopt. And I think one of the challenges as individuals, as a nation, and as a state, we have thought too much of education as a cost. We need to think more in an investment mode. If we think investment mode, any of us, as we're trying to build our future for retirement, as we're trying to build our own assets, we look at using our dollars and our efforts in a certain mindset. And I think sometimes we get caught thinking about education as a cost. I know when I was in Pennsylvania, they had a great saying that it costs 6 times as much to send someone to the state pen as it does to Penn State. And that's the truth. One of those is a cost. It's a dead hole of pain and failure. One of those pathways is one of investment and building a future. The second I would challenge us all on is to have focus. We can go into this initiative looking at trying to do everything at once and get spread too thinly and not succeed. And it's more important that we have some focus, create some real distinction and success, and then move on to the next area and understand that we cannot and should not accomplish everything at once, and that we debate, focus, choose, and then get behind a focal point once we've defined it.
Those of us in the business community have a key role that we can play. We have a great opportunity, as Dr. Vickers mentioned, and we have to have a sense of urgency right now. We have to have a sense of urgency. If we don't invest as business owners, as a city of Bend, as a region, I fear that this region may have 30,000 people in it 15 years from now. We'll be Aspen North because we won't have jobs. And I think Roger Lee has the most difficult damn job in this region. You've got to go out and try to attract and retain manufacturing jobs to a region that doesn't have an educated workforce. And it's not because of the efforts that have been put forth by Becky and Jim, it's just because we as a region haven't supported this wholly in the last half a century. We have a grand opportunity right now to become what I think could be the best damn college town in America, and there's nothing wrong with that. I understand that higher education is changing and the way students utilize higher education is changing. But why not go after a piece of that 25%? Heaven forbid they buy fuel and they rent homes and they buy groceries and God, they might even buy beer. And what better place to do it in America? I'll leave you with this. The economic impact of Oregon State last year, according to Dr. Ray at the City Club of Bend, was $18.76 million. Oregon State's branch campus here put $18 million into our local economy. Central Washington University in Ellensburg, in the tiny little town of Ellensburg in Kittitas County, $255 million of economic impact a year. University of California, Merced, launched in 2005 with 875 students, now has 5,000 students. The last 7 years, they've put $650 million into that local economy in the San Joaquin Valley and $1.2 billion into the state of California. What would our region look like? What would our region look like if we had a going concern four-year university, a community college that is thriving, and an educated workforce? What would we look like here? We tried residential real estate, folks. We all saw how that worked out. The cleanest, greenest industry that we can bring to Central Oregon right now is higher education. Let's make it happen. If we don't, many of us in this room will be elsewhere because we'll have to find jobs there.
Thank you, Dr. Vickers and the rest of the panel. I want to make a few remarks on behalf of the firm. Some of us have been working with some of the panel members since the beginning of this year. We mentioned early in the program we also had Rod Ray, the CEO of Bend Research, on our steering committee. We also had another community volunteer help us out in framing this, and he's sitting in the audience, and I saw him here today, so I'm going to out him, and that's Charlie Miller. On behalf of the firm, thank you, Charlie, for helping us put this on. Some observations, at least from my vantage point of having seen this thing sort of from cradle to grave, so to speak. Dr. Vickers talked about leadership. As I sit and observe the panelists today, from the broad spectrum of our region, as far as economic development, business ownership, Oregon State Board of Higher Education, and our two higher education service providers, I see leadership. Perhaps there's many things we need to do to accomplish the goal, but we seem to have the right team assembled, even on the stage today. And I know, for me, I'm leaving with a sense of optimism that a decade from now, we'll look back at this being one of the pivotal points in Bend's history, in our region's history, that we'll be proud of. Before letting you go, wanted to again thank our community partners and sponsors, including Oregon Business Magazine, Bid Broadband, Zolo Media, as well as all the other sponsors. In particular, I wanted to remind everybody, we feel it's a big deal that Talk of the Town and COTV are here today. That makes us at the firm feel pretty good about that we're on the right track with our Business 2020 Executive Series. We have another one that we're planning for the fall. We don't have a date, but we have a topic. Our topic is going to be regional telecommunications infrastructure. We selected that a few weeks ago, and from the firm point of view, we view it as a natural follow-on to higher education because we see it as interrelated. You heard about online education today. We also know that telecommunications infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, is a driver of the economy into the future. I'm going to read a little bit from a column from the New York Times that I read earlier this year. It talks about communities, saying the best of cities and towns in the future will combine a university, an educated populace, and a dynamic business community, and the fastest broadband connections on Earth. These will be the job factories of the future. The countries that thrive will be those that build more of these towns and make possible, quote, the high performance knowledge, exchange, and generation. I think Bend is well positioned, so hopefully we can achieve that goal. Thank you, everyone.